Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property. Hello, Stu. How are you doing, mate?
I'm not too bad. Yourself?
I'm good, thanks. I want to know how you're feeling first.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too bad. After our last recording, started to sort of come out in a bit more of a cough and a bit coldy. But yeah, other than that, made a strong stuff. Back out of isolation, back on it. So yeah, not
Strong boy, pull your big boy pants up.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's nowhere near as bad as man flu.
Yeah, well, no,
Oh,
there is that.
it doesn't come close to man flu.
Oh, well, that's what a relief. What a
Exactly.
relief.
I know.
What a relief for
The
the
they get
property world,
vaccinated
Stu.
with man flu, the better. But, yeah.
Well, actually, funny enough, you said just before we press record, because what I thought we'd we've swapped messages on LinkedIn about this. Again, kind of talking about the pros and cons of whether the property market should stay open because we're in the midst of another lockdown. But of course, you did make a point, Stu, when we said before we press record about people looking back at these recordings. What was your view?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously we want to try and put as much content out there as possible to help as many people as possible, whether you're buying and selling a property or whether you're a lawyer, whatever the case may be. And it'll be really interesting, won't it? In 6 months' time, or let's hope it is, or a year's time, when you look back and you think, oh, what was all that about? Because it is, I mean, we were talking in the office only yesterday, saying that this busy spell that we're in now only been about 6 months. Only been about 6 months. Seems like 6 years, but it's only been about 6 months. So it'll be interesting when we look back in years to come. And of course, we plan to put a lot more content out on a lot of subjects coming up. And at the moment, it's just obviously topical to talk about the market and what's worrying people and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So if you're a lovely viewer or podcast listener in the middle of 2022, well, we're talking about the COVID property market, so you might want to switch off. That's perhaps the that's the spoiler. That's the spoiler alert. But yes, Stu, what I thought we might have a quick chat about today, because I put and it will lead us, I think, to a different conversation about social media more generally, which I know you and I have talked about in the past as being something to kind of chinwag about. So I put a post out on LinkedIn yesterday. There's been a suggestion, that the property market might have to not close. It didn't close in March, April, May of 2020, but particularly estate agency viewings of property, might have to be put on hold because of this very sort of virulent strain of COVID that we've got going around at the moment. So I simply put something out there to say, well, conveyancers, beware, just be thinking about this possibility now. Think about whether you exchange, think about your advice, and all sorts of hoo-ha, all sorts of, nobody was outwardly rude, to be fair, but quite a lot of people were sort of saying, oh, you're scaremongering. I mean, at what point does saying this might happen, think about it, become scaremongering? What do you think?
Lorraine, does this not go back to some of the previous conversations we've had about people understanding the liability that we undertake? And it's not scaremongering, it's the advice we give to clients. And what I think often gets forgotten, and we've discussed this on numerous occasions, is if we don't bring these subjects up and we don't advise our clients, we're the ones that are negligent. And nobody ever sees that side of it. We get that negligence claim, we foot the bill kind of thing. So we have to bring these matters up. We have to bring them to the attention of our client. I'm always of the opinion that the client should make the decision. Yeah. It shouldn't be us, and we should be heavily advising clients, not making decisions, because I still think that the moment you make the decision, you make the wrong one. You've just gone down another road of negligence. So for me, it's always about the advice that you give, not making decisions. And as far as we're concerned, it's a difficult one at the moment, isn't it? Because, when we talk about the property, lockdown or the property market closing, there's no definition on exactly what that means. You could have something really simplistic, like estate agents aren't allowed to accompany viewers when they go to see a property. It could be as simple as that, couldn't it? A lot of agents, of course, are doing virtual viewings now, and it'd be interesting to see from the estate agent's point of view, you know, what percentage are now doing that? I would imagine that a lot of agents have thought to develop their business, this is now essential, you know, in terms of risk management in case the market does close.
I think a lot of agents, you know, a lot of agents are offering that service, and I think it's great that they are. I think, and again, I'm, you know, stand to be corrected, but I think the general advice though to clients, or the general attitude is, you know, but you'd never want to buy a house just on the basis of a virtual viewing,
Definitely.
But
what if you were going to go and view a property 2 or 3 times, the first viewing virtually might carry weight, mightn't it?
Yeah, I think you'd know whether it was going to sort of generally meet whether it's still going to stay on the possible list, I suppose.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about the post I put out yesterday, because what also people seem to forget is one of the, and this actually sounds a bit like pompous really, but I think one of the functions that you and I hopefully provide for our conveyancing colleagues, and actually, to be quite honest, and I've always thought this, for more junior members of the profession who are often under an enormous amount of pressure, and often, I have to say, quite unsupported, is I see my role as to sort of alert them and to help and support them a bit, and to make them think, because they might still be sitting in their front room working at home. They might not have thought or be aware of, you know, there's just this whiff that the market might change. There's also something in the paper today that somebody's put out, the FT's put out, you know, Rishi Sunak says the property market's going to stay open. But let's face it, this government does have a slight record of, you know, saying one thing and then doing something sometimes the next day. But this idea of supporting more junior members of the profession, just making them think perhaps a little bit harder, I still vehemently feel is justified. So I didn't really feel that people accusing me of scaremongering was particularly justified, and I would always, you know, stand up for myself there, I have to say. But
I don't think it's just junior members. I think what the world that we now live in is so unprecedented that there's, you know, I've had lawyers that I've spoken to that have been, you know, barely qualified, that have barely started, that have taught me a thing or two, that have thought, you know what, actually, you know, this market, you're bloody right there, you know, let's do that. So sometimes I think that this is not something we can sort of, you know, learn from looking through textbooks and stuff like that. You know, it's very much sort of on a week by week basis. And I think the sharing of information in general, it's not to, you know, that we're better than anybody else or anything like that. It's just generally trying to help the profession that at the moment probably needs a bit of help.
It's under such pressure. Yeah, I mean, I always said, actually, you know, the minute, I mean, particularly obviously as somebody who does training as well, I know you do, to be fair, Stu in-house, the minute you think you know it all, you're on a bit of a slippery slope. I've always said it's a bit like believing your own publicity, isn't it? The minute you know it all, do you? No, the minute you believe your own publicity, you're on a downward.
Yeah, you never know it all. I would say at least, you know, every other week somebody comes to you with an issue or problem that you've never come across before.
Yeah.
Especially sort of when you're looking at UK property, you know, all over the country geographically, that there's so many different things that can come up. And, you know, recently we've sort of got heavily involved in crisscross leases and Tyneside leases and stuff like that, which probably only came on my radar within maybe the last 12 months. I don't think before that we'd particularly done any here. So you're always learning, aren't you?
Yeah, I agree. I thought what was interesting about the sort of split in attitude, because as I say, this post yesterday was, you know, I'm not advocating that the property market should close. And actually, you at least doing what we do, you do have, you know, your opinion out there to sort of, either vindicate you or make you look like an idiot 6 months later. But, you know, back in April, I did do an article specifically saying, look, you know, the property market isn't closed. You know, it was massively retracted, but it didn't close. And I don't think it will this time. But what was quite interesting is the only point of me putting something out there was to say, look, conveyancers, just think carefully before you exchange, before you advise your clients to exchange, you know, because if the property market contracts quickly, you know, there might be issues for you to think about. But the response was quite sort of split down the middle, because most conveyancers who responded said, yeah, Lorraine, absolutely, thanks very much, you've got a point. And the estate agents, our estate agent friends that commented sort of said, oh, you know, you're scaremongering and we don't need the market to close. It's like, oh no, you know. I mean, it was quite
I don't think from a professional point of view anybody wants the market closed. And I don't think, I'm not professing to be any expert on COVID-19 or any kind of political agenda at all, but I don't think it would ever close.
No.
Maybe there could be tighter regulation in terms of estate agents allowing viewings, the potential of can removal companies work. They're more the issues, I think, aren't they, than the market completely closing. I mean, let's, like you say, put it being blunt, it never closed in April and May. It remained open the whole time. It was just the sort of movement side of it all was very restricted.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that if anything does come in, it will be of that nature again, won't it?
Yeah, I think the thing is, though, I mean, because of course there were the problems first time round because we were all in an unknown situation. 9 months on, we think we are more well prepared because, we now know something, the social distancing, the measures to put in place. But now, of course, we're dealing with a much more transmissible, virulent, strain of COVID. So that in itself has sort of adapted. But what I thought was interesting is that it seemed to me to be a bit of a contradiction, because it was the agents particularly saying, oh, you're scaremongering, the market shouldn't close. I wasn't advocating that it did, by the way. But of course, they're the people at far more risk than you and I. I can work at home, you're sitting there in your office. It's the estate agents that have got to get out there and go into people's homes. And the estate agent, as an employer, you can put safeguards in place in the workplace for your staff, but it's all bets are off once they walk through, Bob's front door into Acacia Avenue. And I thought that was a point that seemed to have been missed, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, we sort of covered people's views on this sort of a bit before, and I think part of the difficulty is so many people have such varied views on this, from people that think it's a conspiracy theory and it doesn't exist, right the way through to people think that, they literally can't go out their door. But it's so difficult, isn't it? If you think of that period in April, May, we didn't wear masks. Okay, it was all new to us, wasn't it? There wasn't social distancing was just coming in, so on and so forth. If you think of the signage the government wrote about, distancing and the NHS and blah, 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 that's all changed a lot now, isn't it? And, I just wonder whether we're better prepared in terms of entering, these kind of situations. And I still always say, okay, people moving around other people's houses, but we're still going to the supermarket. Do we not do the same sort of thing there? Is social distancing in the supermarket any different to social distancing within somebody's house?
I don't know. As you say, I think one chappie who actually has done this sort of fantastic, service on Twitter. He kind of, interprets and tweets on this guy called Adam Wagner. I think he was on the telly. He kind of puts out commentary on the COVID regulations that the government puts out. And he, I saw yesterday, has come up with, and I think the regs have changed something like, and I could be wrong here, but something like 64 times, so just this idea of the sort of messaging. But I suppose it comes back, Stu, to perhaps the broader point, we put ourselves out there and are prepared to comment. And I think what people sometimes fail to realise is that a comment or an observation isn't necessarily an endorsement of a particular view.
Of course.
And that's, and people sort of jump on the bandwagon a bit. And maybe that's part of the point, I don't know. But as I say, people do tend to have very sort of fixed views. And I sometimes feel there's less room for dialogue.
I think people use social media for different reasons, though, don't they? Sometimes it's to drop a friendly comment, to give content. Other times it's to encourage a conversation or to encourage an argument. You see it all the time with maybe sort of, information that goes on there about football teams, stuff like that.
I wouldn't see that, of course, Stu, because like football.
Must be a bit of that, come on.
No. What would
you see sort of rival fans heckling each other on social media and stuff like that. So, it's just a different watered down version, isn't it? And of course, people use it, don't they, solely for, their own kind of agenda. And that will be different person to person. You know, some people are maybe selling products and they'll put a picture of that product on there, and they're using it as that vehicle. Other people use it for PR purposes.
Oh, I think we can think of somebody there, can't we, Stu? Our good friend Russell.
I said, well, I mean, if you look at sort of Russell, for example, you know, he uses it very well. You know, he's got his own sort of slot on the radio, and you know, he puts content out there that encourages debate that potentially leads people on to engaging with him. So, you know, he uses it for a business-like purpose. But yeah, you know, I think you've got to take it all with a bit of a pinch of salt, haven't you? And
yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly nothing's going to stop me pointing out, you know, personal observations, but I do underline it for me if I'm commenting on property related stuff rather than, you know, what I had for dinner last night, is this idea to sort of inform, really, and to make people think. I always just, the idea, so, you know, if people think I'm scaremongering, well, fair enough, but I'm not going to stop doing it. But
yeah, we generally use it to try and get a message across. I've never ever posted a picture of my dinner or anything like that.
Say just for a minute there, Stu. I wonder what you were going to say.
Well, funnily enough, I was close to the mark there. Yeah, but I've seen people's roast dinner on a Sunday, sitting there being ranked, you know, 9 out of 10. I don't know what you're thinking about.
You just started to say, I've never ever posted a picture of my dinner.
I never do it on social media, only privately.
Yeah, you.
I know.
Right then. Well, I think on that bombshell, on that visual image that you've given me, Stu, we'll probably draw a close.
Early for all that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I hope your recovery continues apace, lovely. I think we'll continue commenting. I'll continue posting stuff and people can continue to argue with us. But I'll see you soon, love.
Take care. See you soon, Lorraine.
Bye.
Bye.